So last time we were in Vietnam, we were in Da Nang. After that, we decided to go back to Saigon and spend the rest of our trip there, which was about a month. So my apologies if this next part is going to be a bit weird. There were some days where I took pictures, there were some days where I didn't, so this might be all over the place. I'll try to keep it as linear as possible. So once we got back to Saigon, we ended up in this place called Pham Viet Chan, which was about 5 minutes away from District 1, where all the crazy, interesting magic happens, I guess. Every day, my routine would be to wake up, go out into the city, see some amazing stuff, get some breakfast, and then pretty much walk around all day and get lost and learn the map. As I'd walk around Vietnam, though, I never really did feel lost. I would just marvel at all the beautiful things that I'd see, and whichever direction looked prettier, that's where I'd end up. I went around some pretty interesting alleys, found myself a bong spa, not what you think, and this church. This is one of the most flamboyant churches I think I'd ever seen. One of my Vietnamese friends, frickin' hysterical, he goes, "That's the Church of Jesus Christ." So every so often I would go out, and I went to this mall this one day, where there's this little market next to the mall where I got this BulletBarry keychain. Essentially, they had little pieces of metal in all a bunch of different shapes, and you got to decide what to write on them. I thought it was very fitting to have a bullet with a berry on it, for obvious reasons. It was a nice little thing to have. Took some pictures of their snacks. I gotta tell you what, Lush is amazing. Hai Chu is very good. Now, if you're driving from Pham Viet Chan, which is where we were living, into District 1, there's this gorgeous mural down this fence that just spanned maybe 60 yards. It was beautiful and probably one of my favorite murals that was out there. Now, in Pham Viet Chan, you're going to want to remember these two people. I used to go to this place called Times House Cafe, and this is what it looks like at night. It's such a gorgeous little spot. I love what they do with these little cubes and make it light up in the trees. But I would go in there, and this girl, she kind of developed a crush on me, which I thought was kind of adorable. Whenever I would go in there and get some food, eventually it got to the point where she would purchase it for me. She would say, "You don't pay anymore." I thought that was kind of nice. So I'm walking around one day, and I find this coffee shop. Chung Nguyen Legend, the energy coffee that changes life. What a narcissistic slogan. I sat there and just looked at it for a while and was like, are you serious? Changes life? How does your coffee change life? I was too curious and I went in. And I'm looking down their menu, and one kind of sticks out to me. The energy coffee for discovery. I mean, I'm in a foreign country. Why not? Pick up this energy coffee. Honestly, it just kind of tasted like coffee. It wasn't special. There was nothing to it. It was alright. Later in the evening, Jake and Asia took me to this place called Ken's House Coffee. Now, this place was really special because inside are a bunch of huskies and other dogs. Essentially, you get to go in there and have a coffee and hang out with a bunch of dogs. It was just a lovely experience. Now, I know, again, this is kind of all over the place, but a few days later, we're driving. And we were driving around dinner time. We drove for about 4 hours trying to find this place. Jake and Asia told me about this cuisine that's a bit controversial. And when they told me about it, I was like, okay, let's go ahead and check it out. Now, I started to get really hungry. We were driving for 4 hours, mostly because we didn't know where this place was. Finally, we get there. And I'll go ahead and show you guys what this plate looked like. Now, most of the time when I show this picture to people, they say, okay, you ate bugs or some sort of insect. Maybe those are crickets. Really what it was quails. What they would do is they'd take a bucket full of quails. I don't know how they prepare them. I don't know if they kill them beforehand. I don't have that information for you. And my apologies for how this is gonna sound, but they throw them into a deep fryer, which, if they're not dead, hopefully insta-kills them. And then they mix special sauce in there and you eat them whole. You eat the entire thing. They were very crunchy. They were very chewy. Different parts of their body did distinctly have different textures and tastes. I was so hungry, I didn't really care what it was I was eating. And this is only one of the controversial meals that I had. Call me a monster if you will. Perhaps I am. Speaking of food, though, there's some really awesome food. This is called an okonomi, which is a Japanese pancake. And if you've never had one of these, I definitely recommend it. It's one of my favorite meals. This is a hot pot. There was sweet and sour on one side, and then hot and spicy on the other. That's not normally how you do it. You just order one pot, and you kind of have to just deal with what you get. But we essentially take things off of a conveyor belt and throw them in there, and then when they're done, you eat them. A few days later, I'm walking through this park, and I got a friend of mine a Rubik's Cube. I had been teaching myself Rubik's Cube, and I wanted to get a souvenir from Vietnam for a buddy of mine. And when I was in the park, this guy comes and sits down next to me, and he starts talking to me. We're just kind of hanging out, and he invites me to this vegan or vegetarian place where we had this mushroom hot pot that was just really, really good. Jake and Asia that day invited me into Boi Ven, which is the party district in Vietnam, and I'd never been there before. I invited Henry to go with us, and he took me all the way to Boi Ven, but would not go inside. And turns out there's a big number of Vietnamese who will not go to the party district, and there's pretty good reason for that. We get in there, and Jake orders a shisha, which is just flavored tobacco, and honestly, not really my thing. After that, he orders a bunch of alcohol, and we're getting plastered, and orders balloons. Now, in Vietnam, at these bars, they sell nitrous oxide, which is laughing gas, and if you've ever been to the dentist, you've probably experienced this stuff. It's a pretty harmless compound. I knew nothing about it at the time. I just saw everyone around me doing it, and I was like, okay, I'll when in Rome, what the hell? I got a little nuts on this stuff, and this kind of throws us into our first story. So we're walking down the street, and Jake and Asia look over at this little establishment. It's a party house, and they're like, "Hair of the Dog, we've been in there before. Barry, you should go in there." And I'm like, "Hair of the Dog, what is it?" And they're like, "It's a party house. It's gonna be packed with people. It's gonna be nuts. You should just go in and see what it is." And I'm like, "Okay." So I walk in, and I'm, it's packed wall to wall with people. There are people just crazy, just up against me, and I was in there for maybe a minute and a half, and I walk out, and we're walking down the road. It's not long after that I realize I don't have my phone on me, and I had my phone before I walked into the party house. Someone had totally snatched my phone right out of my pocket while I was in there. It was so hard to tell. There were so many people all over me, and I kicked myself for not being so vigilant. Normally, I look after my things. I was pissed for a bit, but after a while, I was like, you know what? I'm not dead. It's just a phone. I'm really not worried about it. And the second rendition of the Razr phones come out. It gives me an opportunity to take a look at that. I've been curious about it anyway, so I wasn't that worried. The next day, I go and get myself a new phone. I paid $2 million for this thing at a little shop, which is about $80 for this little dinky thing. It's a Sony Xperia. I don't even know which generation, and it's not very good. It's slow. The processor's just horrible. It's an old phone. But I open it up for the first time, and this is what I see. This poor dude had the exact same thing happen to him. Someone stole his phone, didn't even take the time to wipe it, and then sold it. And I actually spent a decent amount of time looking through this guy's information, trying to find out his name, but none of his social medias were accessible. I couldn't find him, so I just deleted the information and moved on. From that point, I just spent a lot of time walking around. I'd go into shops and I'd see what they had. This building was gorgeous. They had this erected when the French had control over Vietnam. Some of their buildings are just beautiful. There would be times where I'd go into stores and I'm looking for souvenirs. I was looking for these bears for a really long time for a friend of mine. This one cracked me up because as gloomy as that beer was back there, this one shot itself in the head. I loved walking through the city. I never felt lost, like I said before. The only part that really bothered me was how much garbage is around. But there were other things that really kind of balanced it out. Like you have here on this fence, this little community garden. They'd plant some stuff, and as you needed things, you just walk by and take what you want. So I told you to remember those guys from earlier at Times House Cafe. This girl sends me a message with a photo. She says, if you come to Times House, I will give you your birthday present. Now, I'd totally forgotten this. In Vietnam, your birthday's very important. I never really celebrated my birthday as I was a Jehovah's Witness. But this was one of the first times that I ever celebrated my birthday, and they went all out. They got me a cake. I invited Henry. We all had a really nice time. I couldn't believe that they had done that for me.
Happy birthday, Barry. Was this candle? Yeah.
Here's just some more pictures of me walking around the city. I found these guys doing construction, and this boss took an interest in the fact that I had a camera. He puts his cigarette out. He's like, "Come check this out." He's showing me what everyone's doing, and everyone's freaking out. They're like, "Dude, that guy's totally taking a picture." I went to this part of town. It was a Chinese district, and funnily enough, they were celebrating the Chinese New Year, which happened to be the year of the pig. The reason that's so interesting is because my Chinese zodiac sign, I didn't even realize is the pig. It kind of felt like one of those meant-to-be situations. I went to this shop where they had all these decorations, and this guy ran up to me, and he's like, "Take a picture of my wife. She's in the very back. She's wearing white. Take a picture, take a picture." I was like, all right. Now, this is one of the last controversial meals that I ate out in Vietnam. So we met this guy named Fung, and Fung had actually been a friend of Jake and Asia's the first time they went out there. Fung has this, I guess, reputation where what he does is takes foreigners and throws them into an experience that they normally wouldn't have in Vietnam. For example, last time Jake and Asia were out there, he took them to this coconut worm restaurant where they served live coconut worms where you have to bite the head off and eat the worm while it's still alive, which I didn't get a chance to do. How unfortunate for me. But he did take me to this place where they serve goat. And if you can tell what this thing is, this is a goat penis. We sat there and cooked on the goat penis, and Fung got drunk and was asking who was going to take the first bite and who's going to like the penis more. It was a really funny night, and I had a wild time. Now, for those of you who are curious, when I did eat this stuff, the testicles, they tasted like boiled eggs. The penis itself tasted like ham hocks. To me, meat is just meat. I know some people have, that's an association. That's a penis. I'm not going to eat that. For me, I didn't really mind. It's just, cooked meat. Not really that big of a deal. There was this little girl. Normally around Vietnam, you'll see people walk up to you with lottery tickets, and they will ask you to purchase them from them. Normally, I say no. This little girl was so cute. She'd run up and she'd be like, "Hello, hello, hello." She'd run away. So I waved her over and I purchased one from her. I didn't win the lottery, but it was a nice souvenir to have, and I was happy to help out. The fact that the little girl has to work is kind of sad. It means her family's not doing well. So I was at least happy to do that for her. Now, a couple days later, we went to this place called the Bitexco Financial Tower. In the very bottom floor of this tower, they have a Samsung experience where they allow you, for free, to go in and test all of Samsung's latest and greatest products. From virtual reality, they put you on these ski boards and put you in virtual reality, and you have to ski down a slope. They put you in these chairs, that virtual reality roller coaster. I thought was amazing. We got free coffee for going in there. They give you a free coffee just for coming in and enjoying all this free stuff. I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that they weren't charging us for this. We got to enjoy this big flat screen 144 hertz Samsung wraparound monitor. It was so fun to game on. And we had ourselves a wild time. After that, it was unfortunately time to go. I got on a plane. We had a layover in China for about 8 hours. And in China, that's where they stole most of my souvenirs. All my lighters that I was going to buy for people. They took my BulletBarry necklace. I asked them, "What the hell? This is a chunk of metal." And they said, "Nope, don't care." Now, there is one last story that is very important that I do have to tell. And I will tell another time. The reason this story is so important is that it goes from the very beginning of Vietnam, my first trip, all the way to the end of my last trip. And I will tell that story next time to launch my second edition of these Vietnam stories. I hope you guys enjoyed this series. This was my first experience, and I cannot wait to tell the second story. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you then.